You're listening to Audiology. Support our work on Patreon, and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. Part 1 Introduction. On November 9th, 1989, a significant event unfolded as the Berlin Wall, a symbol of division, was brought down amid the non-violent upheaval known as the Peaceful Revolution. This pivotal moment not only represented the collapse of a physical barrier, but also signified the dismantling of the metaphorical Iron Curtain. This was a critical point among a string of developments that catalyzed the decline of communist rule across Central and Eastern Europe, following on the heels of the Solidarity movement in Poland. In close succession, the border within Germany also came down. Recognition of the Cold War's end was formally acknowledged during the Malta summit just 3 weeks after the wall's fall, setting the stage for Germany to reunite almost a year later in October. Part 2 Background. The barrier known as the Iron Curtain was first breached on August 19, 1989, at the Pan-European picnic near the Austria-Hungary border. This event was a catalyst for the subsequent fall of East Germany and the fragmentation of Eastern Bloc countries. Otto von Habsburg originally conceived the idea for the picnic to see how the Soviet Union, led by Mikhail Gorbachev, would react to a border opening. Following widespread media coverage, a significant number of East Germans traveled to Hungary, where they were welcomed at the picnic with gifts, food, and Deutsche Marks, incenting them to defect to the West. East German leader Erich Honecker remarked to the Daily Mirror how Habsburg enticed East Germans holidaying as far away as Poland to the event. The East German government hesitated to seal its borders completely, while the Soviet Union remained unresponsive, effectively loosening the grip of Eastern Bloc unity. After the summer events, by November, refugees began using different routes through Czechoslovakia or the West German embassy in Prague to reach Hungary. On September 30th, West German Foreign Minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher arrived at the Prague embassy to announce to the elated refugees that they could travel to West Germany. The movement across the Czechoslovak border became so substantial it caused significant issues for the involved nations, compounded by East Germany's failing economy and debt management challenges, leading Egon Krenz to unsuccessfully negotiate for financial aid from West Germany. Regarding the protection of the Berlin Wall, it consisted of 2 parallel barriers, not just one, each standing 4 meters tall and extending for 155 kilometers. They enclosed an area known as the Death Strip, laden with mines. The wall was vigorously patrolled with 302 watchtowers, and guards were authorized to shoot anyone trying to escape across the barrier into West Berlin. In the political realm within East Germany, Erich Honecker resigned on October 18, 1989, in favor of Egon Krenz due to both health issues and mounting political pressure. Although waiting for a natural transition due to Honecker's ill health was initially considered, the urgent need for political and economic reform hastened his replacement. Honecker endorsed Krenz, who was then officially elected by the Volkskammer. Krenz's initial promises of reform fell flat, as the public perceived his approach as too similar to his predecessors. Growing protests and dissent culminated in Krenz approving the easing of restrictions on the Czechoslovak border, an expansive demonstration at Alexanderplatz, and a forthright call for more profound changes to travel policies. This pressure led to a significant reshuffling of the government, although Krenz managed to retain his position. Krenz tasked Gerhard Lauter, a former police officer and recent appointee within the Interior Ministry, to draft an amended travel policy. After intensive deliberations within the Politburo, a decision was made on November 7th to implement changes to the rules concerning permanent emigration. They concluded it was impractical to create a specialized border crossing. Instead, a revised law was drafted permitting East Germans to apply for travel abroad without the strict conditions that were previously required. On November 9th, Krenz and the Politburo expanded this policy by allowing refugees to exit directly through any checkpoints between East and West Germany, including those in Berlin. The revised policy was expanded to allow private and return travel and was to be implemented the following day. Part 3. Misinformed Public Announcements. Günter Schabowski, the party boss of East Berlin and chief government spokesperson, presided over a press conference that lasted an hour, starting at 6 p.m. CET on November 9th. The event was broadcasted live on television and radio in East Germany. Schabowski was accompanied by Gerhard Bale, the Minister of Foreign Trade, and members of the Central Committee, Helga Labs and Manfred Banaszak. Despite his high-ranking position, Schabowski had not been involved in creating the new travel policies and was not fully briefed. Just before the press event, he received a last-minute note from Krenz detailing the policy changes, but he had no further guidance on how to present them. The note clarified that East Germans could now request permission to travel or emigrate internationally without the previously required prerequisites, and this applied to all borders, including those separating East and West Berlin. As the press conference neared its end at 18:53, journalist Ricardo Ehrman inquired if a draft travel law from November 6th was a mistake. Schabowski, initially giving a muddled answer about it being a necessity due to West Germany reaching its limit to accept more East German refugees, suddenly recalled the note. He mentioned the new policy allowing emigration at any border and, upon realizing reporters were unaware of this, began reading from the note. Confusion ensued, and spurred by questions, Schabowski said the policy was effective immediately, a spur-of-the-moment assumption derived from the note's opening lines. Although Bale tried to clarify by saying the Council of Ministers would decide the enactment date, Schabowski read aloud a clause saying the policy would remain until the People's Chamber enacted a law about it. When asked if this also applied to West Berlin crossings, Schabowski confirmed it by reading from the note. This revelation led Daniel Johnson of the Daily Telegraph to ask about the implications for the Berlin Wall. Schabowski, clearly unprepared for such a monumental query, gave a disjointed response, linking the wall's fate to broader disarmament issues. He wrapped up the conference at 7 p.m., just as journalists were rushing out to spread the news. Subsequently, Schabowski repeated the same information regarding border crossing and immediate effect of the regulations in an interview with NBC News anchor Tom Brokaw. Part 4. The news spread. The information quickly spread after the West German news agency, Deutsche Presseagentur, announced at 7:04 p.m. that East Germans were granted immediate permission to traverse the inner German border. The revelation from Schabowski's news conference was swiftly televised on West Germany's primary news broadcasts, first on ZDF's Heute at 7:17 p.m., and then as the main news item at 8 p.m. on ARD's Tagesschau. Given that both ARD and ZDF had been available in almost all of East Germany since the late 1950s and generally had higher viewership than East German stations, this became the source through which most East Germans learned the news. That same evening, Hans-Joachim Friedrichs on ARD's Tagesthemen declared the significance of the day, highlighting that the German Democratic Republic, GDR, had made its borders accessible to all, effectively leaving the Berlin Wall's checkpoints open. In 2009, Ehrman made a claim suggesting a Central Committee member had prompted him to ask about the travel regulations during the press conference, which Schabowski dismissed as preposterous. However, Ehrman revised his earlier claim in 2014 during an interview with an Austrian journalist, admitting that it was actually Günter Pötschke, the head of the East German news agency ADN, who had called him, but the call was simply to inquire if Ehrman would be present at the press conference. Part 5. Peace Prayers at Nikolai Church. In the face of East Germany's official stance against religion, Reverend Christian Führer consistently held prayer meetings at St. Nicholas Church starting in 1982. Over the ensuing 7 years, the number of people attending these gatherings swelled, regardless of the government's efforts to restrict access by blocking nearby roads. These gatherings were followed by peaceful processions illuminated by candles. The state secret police resorted to intimidating tactics, including death threats and physical assaults on participants. Yet this did not stop people from coming together. On the 9th of October 1989, though the authorities were authorized to use force to disperse the crowd, the planned church service and subsequent march proceeded. Remarkably, on that day, a massive crowd of 70,000 individuals participated, and the event unfolded without any gunfire. Part 6. Crowding of the Border. Following a broadcast on November 9th, throngs of East German citizens flocked to the Berlin Wall, clustering at the various checkpoints that separated East and West Berlin. They insisted that the guards immediately open the gates. Caught off guard, the guards frantically made calls to their higher-ups, grappling with the situation. Initially, they tried to target the more confrontational individuals in the crowd, marking their passports with a unique stamp that effectively stripped them of their East German citizenship and prevented their return. However, this did little to quell the masses who clamored to pass through the gates, citing the broadcast's implication that they were allowed to do so. Before long, it was apparent that none of the East German leaders would endorse the use of fatal force, leaving the outnumbered soldiers powerless to restrain the growing number of citizens. Mary-Elise Surratt described the chain of events that culminated in the collapse of the Berlin Wall as a serendipitous blunder in a 2009 story for the Washington Post. She expressed that this pivotal moment in history was actually the result of an accidental, almost farcical bureaucratic error, heavily influenced by Western media as much as by the currents of historical change. Part 7. Border Openings. On the evening of November 9, 1989, close to either 10:45 p.m. or 11:30 p.m., Harold Jaeger, who was in charge of the Bornholmer Strasse border post, made the decision to give in to the pressure. As a result, the border guards opened the gates and allowed the crowd of East Germans to pass through with minimal to no checks of their IDs. The East Germans, known as Ossis, poured into the West, where they were warmly welcomed by their Western counterparts, the Wessis, who celebrated their arrival with flowers, champagne, and widespread elation. Shortly after, many West Berliners climbed onto the Berlin Wall, joined by young East Germans, embodying the iconic moment when the Berlin Wall, which had long divided the city, symbolically began to fall. Part 8. Legacy. Celebrations and anniversaries. On November 21, 1989, the musical group Crosby, Stills and Nash performed Chippin' Away, a track from member Graham Nash's 1986 album Innocent Eyes, near the Brandenburg Gate. On Christmas Day of the same year, Leonard Bernstein conducted a memorable concert in Berlin to mark the demolition of the Berlin Wall. The event featured Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, with Ode to Joy's lyrics altered from joy to freedom, which may reflect the original sentiment expressed by poet Schiller before possible self-censorship. Musicians from East and West Germany, alongside artists from the UK, France, the Soviet Union, and the US, joined forces for this performance. Notably, on New Year's Eve, David Hasselhoff sang "Looking for Freedom" atop the partially dismantled wall before a crowd of 200,000 people. On July 21, 1990, Roger Waters staged a production of Pink Floyd's The Wall near Potsdamer Platz, with various artists including the Scorpions and Joni Mitchell participating. The suggestion to make November 9th a national holiday in Germany has been a subject of repeated debate, owing to its historical significance. This date not only symbolizes the peak of East Germany's peaceful revolution, but also coincides with other momentous events in German history, including Kaiser Wilhelm II's abdication in 1918, the execution of Robert Blum in 1848, the 1923 Beer Hall Putsch, and the devastating Kristallnacht in 1938. Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel pointed out the painful association with Kristallnacht. Ultimately, with the formal completion of reunification on October 3, 1990, this later date was established as German Unity Day. 10th Anniversary Celebrations. The 10th anniversary of the Berlin Wall's fall on November 9, 1999, featured a blend of music and remembrance. Cellist Mstislav Rostropovich delivered a Bach performance, and the rock group Scorpions reprised their iconic song Wind of Change. The occasion was also marked by honoring those killed trying to flee to the West, accompanied by political addresses and commemorative wreaths. 20th Anniversary Celebrations. Berlin threw a festival of freedom, on November 9, 2009, to celebrate 2 decades since the wall's collapse, with a grand event at the Brandenburg Gate attended by global dignitaries. A distinctive highlight was the toppling of a line of 1,008-foot-tall foam dominoes, vibrantly decorated to represent parts of the wall, leading to the gate. A digital Berlin Twitter wall was set up for the public to post messages, but it was soon blocked in China when citizens started using it to protest internet censorship. In the US, the German embassy launched a college-focused campaign titled Freedom Without Walls. Over 30 universities partook in related events, and a speaking contest's winner received a trip to Berlin. The international project, Mauerfall, sent symbolic wall fragments around the world to serve as canvases for artistic and intellectual expression in regions affected by division. For the 20th anniversary, the virtual world Twinity meticulously reconstructed a section of the Berlin Wall in the digital realm. The event coincided with performances by U2 and Tokyo Hotel at the MTV Europe Music Awards. Elsewhere, Palestinians dismantled parts of the Israeli barriers in solidarity, and the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., showcased a Trabant car rally, which included a Trabant bursting through a mock Berlin Wall. Berlin's Allied Museum also held a special exhibition focusing on the patrols monitoring the wall. 30th anniversary celebrations. In 2019, Berlin organized a comprehensive week-long arts festival from November 4th to 10th, and a citywide music festival on November 9th to mark 3 decades since the wall's fall. Outdoor exhibits were unveiled at several historic sites, including Alexanderplatz, the Brandenburg Gate, East Side Gallery, and the former Stasi headquarters, acknowledging the city's transformation and the enduring impact of reunification.